So we are talking with Tsherin Sherpa. He is a renowned artist from Nepal and resides in USA. And back here in Nepal, he is also working on making the art scene much more visible and much more practicable for each and every individual artist. Tsherin Rai, welcome to the show.
Thank
Khojpatra.
you, thank you, thank you.
Let's begin your journey from the beginning.
Acha,
How was your childhood like
acha,
while you were growing up?
acha. So, I was born into a Thangka painter's family. My father was a practicing Thangka artist when I was born, and he actually trained two of his younger brothers who were also Thangka painters. And so my environment, like when I was growing up, was very much about traditional art, because most of the visitors that we had in our home were either Thangka painters or monastery monks, and they would always talk about different images, deities. So it was kind of a vibrant scene, but at the same time I was completely not in connection with the contemporary art scene, or let's say modern art, or any form of art that was beyond traditional art. So as you know, like Bodha in itself, even today, is so isolated from like the rest of the Kathmandu city. So it feels like you're as if going to a new place, a different place, right? So back then it was even more like isolated. And I grew up in Bodha, but I think I was also going to school at that time, and I was good at drawing. I used to copy like the images of birds, flowers, animals. Back then we used to get these posters, like I think my dad used to buy that for me to study English, the names of the flowers and names of the animals and stuff. And I was much more attracted to the visual form. So I used to like copy these images on my drawing books, etc. And he felt that I had some drawing skill or interest in drawing. So when I was in grade 9th, I was also not a very good student academically at that time. I'm a little bit dyslexic also. So my parents thought like maybe it's very important to hand down some skill to me so that I can survive in this world. So eventually they started like they decided to teach me Thangka painting. So, and that's when my formal education on traditional art began.
Was it in grade 9 that you started studying?
Yes,
Thangka?
yes. So I was, I think, 13 years old, something like that, yeah.
So how was the experience like while your parents or your father was teaching you the basics of Thangka paintings? How was your experience like? I mean, people go outside the home in order to learn it, but you had the university at your home itself.
Yeah.
How was the experience like?
So it was daunting actually, because it's always good to go out and be in a new environment. But like when you wake up, you're already in that environment, right? So, and my dad's studio, which is a room, which is right next to my bedroom. So having to study with him. And on top of that, I used to be really, really scared of my father, because he was very serious person back then. And so that kind of like used to scare me. But again, like over a period of time, I began to enjoy, I would say, drawing, and that's when I started like gradually learning. The first image that I was given by my dad was of a head of a Buddha with all the grid measurement system, and I had to draw that probably for 3 months, almost 8 hours a day, like consistently, and I had like piles of drawings. And I think traditionally we are taught how to repeatedly do something. At the end, it sort of like helps the skill become your second nature at some point. So I think it was very beneficial, of course.
Could you tell us the name of your father?
Urgin Dorje Sherpa.
And was he teaching other students as well in those days?
Yes, I think I remember first he taught two of my uncles, which I didn't get to see. My youngest uncle was still studying with my father at that time, who is only like 3 years, who was 3 years older than me. And then after that, there used to be some like expat communities. They would have some of their children come to my dad's studio and study with him sometimes. Also, there's a white monastery in Bodha, the Kanying Shedubling. Some of the monks of that monastery also came to our house to study with my father. So he was actually teaching quite a few people back then. Yeah.
Which year was it when you began studying with him?
So I was like 13 years old. So I was born in 1968. So we'll have to calculate. So I think it's like early 80s, I would say. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So do you remember any particular day in those days that you really began enjoying the paintings?
So I remember I wasn't that excited to paint and draw the images of deities because I saw it so many times. So I guess I call myself like desensitized because having seen it repeatedly for many years. But I remember my mom had a friend, Norwegian friend, who used to bring a lot of like, she was more like a tour guide, and she used to bring many Norwegians to Nepal. And they actually started commissioning me and my uncle, youngest uncle, that if we could create some like sceneries of, mountain climbing or trekking or things like that. So which was outside the, I would say, the traditional images, right? Yeah. So that I really enjoyed working on. And also at that time, my uncle and I were like, used to read a lot of comic books, and we thought of creating a comic book of our own. So we used to come up with stories, I think my uncle should still have, his family he passed away last year, like due to COVID, but his family should still have some of those like templates that we created back then. So it was in the 80s. And so that's the process I really enjoyed, I remember. Yeah.
So for how many years did you practice there?
I actually studied for almost about 5 years with my dad. And then in 1988, I left for Taiwan to study computer science. And I was there for about year and a half altogether, and then came back, and then again went back. And so in total maybe I spent about 3 years in Taiwan, 3 or 4 years, And after that, I came back and started like assisting my father in other projects, like painting intricate tankas, or even painting monastery murals, etc. Yeah.
So when was the year that you went to USA?
That was in 98. So in between, I was still on and off working with my father, and I was also getting some like tanka commissions from my Western friends, a few of my Western friends, and yeah, so I was basically constantly working on tankas at that time. Yeah.
So when you were in Taiwan, as you said, uh, did you get any commissioned works?
No, in Taiwan, I didn't touch painting at all. So what I did was I studied Mandarin, I studied computer science, and I started working in some restaurants. I started working in factories because I had to earn living also. And I was even working as a salesperson at one of the trading companies in World Trade Center. And ironically, actually, it is the same World Trade Center that I will be exhibiting my work this May as an artist. So it's kind of funny. But yes, no, while in Taiwan, it's so ironic that even when I met my wife over there, and she didn't know I had learned tanka painting. Because I think somewhere like inside me, I didn't want to be known as a tanka artist. I wanted to project myself someone different. Like maybe I wanted to I even tried to do some business. Like I used to take some of the Nepalese handicraft and then sell it to Taiwanese buyers. I was trying everything, but not to become a tanka artist. It didn't work.
So why avoiding such a traditional
Yes.
form of art, as your father
Yeah.
and the generation before used to do it?
Yeah.
So why did you deviate from it?
Yes.
Or what was the reason behind it?
So the biggest reason I felt was there was no respect within the community here in Nepal. Like I could see how difficult it was for my dad to make these works, but I mean he has to like sort of support his family, 3 children, wife, mother, and I saw the degradation of respect. Earlier, when I was much younger, the respect was much more there because over years, I think what happened was tanka painting became commodified more and more. Many factories sprung, and then like people started looking at it more as handicraft, souvenir product rather than
Form of meditation.
a form of art or meditation. And that sort of like, I guess, had a big reason for me to really run away from it and to do something new.
For 1998,
Yeah.
since you were living in Nepal, how did the opportunity came for you to go to the USA?
So one of my mom's friend, she was a Fulbright scholar, and she was visiting here, and she said like, you have to visit the US in order for you to, have a broader perspective. And I had many American friends growing up because there were lots of tourists or some who were studying with my father back then. Some were living in our house as like guests, in the sense like paying guests. So the opportunity came and she wanted to invite me, so I just went and applied for visa, and for some weird reason I got the visa. Then so that's why I was actually planning to be in the US only for 2 months. And as soon as I landed in the US, they found out like I know Thangka painting. So there were some Buddhist centers, and they were looking for a Thangka painter to actually help them create Thangkas and paint the statues like faces, etc. And so I just landed right there in California, and that's when it just happened. Yeah.
So for the next 10 years, when you were in the USA, what else did you do besides painting for the monasteries?
Yeah.
What else?
So in the beginning, I was just painting for the monastery, and I was also teaching Thangka painting to the Buddhist students. Then I started actually visiting, because I had several exhibitions, like because sometimes the monasteries, they organize like sand mandala exhibitions, and along with the sand mandala, they invited me to take part as a Thangka artist also. So when we were exhibiting that, some artists came across and they invited me to their studios, so they invited me to visit the galleries, museums, and that's when I felt like, wow, there's a whole new world out there, which I haven't had the opportunity to explore earlier. So then apart from painting Thangkas, I did a demonstration program at a museum in San Francisco. During that period, some company, it's a company called Jamba Juice, actually had seen some of my works, and they wanted to make some marketing posters for their campaign, nationwide campaign. So they hired me to do 3 posters for them, which I did. And so yeah, I was doing like mostly artworks. I even painted somebody's car, like just with lots of clouds and lions and stuff like that. So all kinds of random things, but everything to do with art. So I stayed with the monastery for about 2 years, and after that I left and I was in my own, but that's when I also started organizing my own classes. I used to put up like flyers, on the streets, universities, and saying like, okay, I'm teaching Thangka painting classes. And
so wasn't there a conflict of interest between you yourself as a Thangka artist and you yourself as a contemporary artist?
I wasn't a contemporary artist back then yet. So what happened? Okay, I have to tell you, we have to rewind a little bit. So why I continued as a Thangka artist? Before I was running away, right? Here in Nepal, and suddenly I'm like so appreciative of this tradition. What happened was I was invited by a couple of my Asian friends to go to the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco for the first time. And that was my first visit ever to a museum in the US. So we paid the entrance fee, we walk in, and then I see this giant like 17th or 18th century Thangka inside the museum. And the way they have displayed it, the respect that they have given to the work, and the catalogs, like big, thick catalogs, and how I for the first time I learned like how much people have put so much effort into like talking about these works from the past. And that's when it hit me that, wow, this is an amazing tradition. Like I thought like this is some souvenir work or some object of puja, for ritual purpose, but nothing in between. For the first time, I saw it as an art form, and then I was like, it was a huge moment for me. I didn't know, like I was looking for something precious outside of me, and didn't know that knowledge was still there with me. And that's when I decided that I'm going to be a Thangka painter. I'm going to teach this tradition. I'm going to like promote this tradition. So I was so much focused on being a Thangka painter until I would say 2006, 7. My ultimate goal was to have one of my works in a museum, a Thangka in a museum. And that happened in 2007. The museum actually acquired one of my works.
Was it Rubin's museum?
No, it was the Asian Art Museum of San Francisco. The same museum that I had visited earlier. But I also found out that it's so limiting, because I think even the museums, okay, in a cultural context, they actually appreciate Thangka painting, but to an extent, because it's a tradition, like it's a traditional art form, right? Then by that time, I had started visiting like many museums, galleries also, and I think I also saw an exhibition in around 2004 and again 2006 or 7, something like that. Was contemporary art from India and contemporary art from China. So that was the first time I started seeing like neighboring countries like artworks. Before that, it was all Eurocentric or American like art in the museums. And that sort of hit me like, wow. Because I saw works of some artists like, for example, Sazia Sikandar. She's from Pakistan and she was trained in miniature paintings. And how she transformed miniature painting into contemporary art. And I saw this huge possibility. I saw Chinese brush painters, like, you know, ink painters, bridging from traditional to contemporary. So that's when I started, like, I think 2008 was the first time that I showed. I used to practice a lot, but I used to be a little less confident in sharing the work with others, because I felt like maybe it's never good enough, you know. Then in 2008 was the first time like I actually shared some of my works to other friends, and they started appreciating it, acquiring it, and then that's how gradually I transited from like being a traditional Thangka painter to...
So it was in the same year that you were, or the works that you did was selected in the Rubin's Museum, right?
No, that was much later. Okay. So what happened much later in the sense like 2008 was when I started, and 2009 I got a call, like I was introduced to Rossi Gallery by one of the curators from the Asian Art Museum. So she said like, okay, there's a gallery in New York, which is based in London and in New York, and they're promoting Himalayan artists. Probably you should like, you know, I should put you in touch with them. So I showed some of my works, and they actually, the dealer Fabio was in New York, and he said like, can you ship this work to me tomorrow? So I shipped it from California to New York, and then after 2 days I received a message saying, oh, your work has been sold, bought by somebody. They didn't tell me like who it was. And I was making works and I was selling it continuously. And then after a few months, like he said, I'm gonna fly to California to meet you and we need to talk. So he flew into California, and then he said like, okay, all the works that you have been selling up until now is bought by the founder of the Rubin Museum, Donald Rubin himself, for his private collection. So I was shocked, like, and so they said, now we're planning a big exhibition in 2010 at the Rubin Museum for the first time, a contemporary art exhibition, and they want you to be part of it. So that's how it all happened.
So there were other 3 artists from Nepal at that time?
I think so. Yeah, Rigdol probably was there, and then there was Tenzin Obu,
Yes.
and then yeah,
And you yourself?
yeah, yeah.
Right. So how was the experience like?
Oh, that was a big moment for me because I was exhibiting my work for the first time. Someone who has never had the opportunity to show in an art gallery contemporary works, someone who's never been to an art school, someone who was self-taught, and having this and to show in a museum in New York is a big deal, of course. So I was way inconfident at that time. It's not that like I was not excited. I was excited, but at the same time I was also scared, like because I felt maybe I'm not good enough. So that fear was there.
Right. So let's get back to the Jamba juice. I mean, what motivated you, or was it your idea or the
Company's idea.
company's idea itself to portray your artworks there?
No. So what happened was they approached me and they said like, okay, we have an idea. We need marketing posters. It needs to be done in Thangka style. So then what are you going to make? Then I decided like, okay, I'm going to make it look like a Thangka. I'm going to remove the deity. I'll place the jamba glass. And then all the ingredients that go into the drink, I'll just put it in the bottom as an offering. And then we'll have clouds and dragons and whatnot. So yeah, it just worked out. Yeah.
Okay, let's get to the idea of how you started contemporary art.
Mhm.
I mean, what was the reason behind
Mhm.
portraying the deities
Mhm.
in a different way, just like the normal people?
No,
What
no.
was the idea like?
So my first work was not one of the spirits. My first work is a big blue giant guy, which has like which is more like an institution, because at that time, 2008, there was a huge market crash all over the world. The banks were like bankrupt, and at that time, like this financial institutions and people suffering was such a huge thing. So that was my first work. It was a blue giant figure, which is kind of like a corporate organization, which is actually their activity is having impact on regular people. So that was my first painting. And then the second painting was also about a blue guy who's actually, baffled by a lot of like advertisements and stuff like that. So many of my works in the beginning were not about the spirit at all. It was only in 2000 and I think late 2009, early 2010, just before the exhibition, Rubin actually gave me the opportunity to have a residency at Vermont Studio Center in Vermont, and which is like an international hub for like residency. So there were artists from all over the world, from Korea, China, Indonesia, Thailand, US, France, everywhere. And I was there for 2 months, and I needed to create a body of work during the residency. And you're supposed to have an exhibition at the end of the residency at a small like gallery that they had at the residency place. And I didn't know what to do. Like I just couldn't come up with a subject matter. And then I wanted to draw inspiration from my childhood. So that's when I thought about like creating a figure which is about spirit. because my grandmother, when I was growing up, used to tell us stories about spirit of the mountain, spirit of the water, spirit of the valley. So I used to imagine like me, myself, I'm like far away from where I was born and where I grew up. I'm in a new place, new environment. So probably like many of us have departed from their homeland just like us in a place like US, right? What happens to the spirits? Do they travel with them? Or do they just like remain in the same place? Because spirit to me is a mental, collective mental phenomena. We create that. So I felt like if we create this spirit, then probably it comes along with us. And if they do, then how do they function in this new environment? So that's what was going on in my head. And that's when I first started this character. Yeah.
So in so many of your paintings of the spirit series, I could see the deities doing such a mundane works,
Yeah.
just like normal people
Yeah.
generally do.
I would say, like, I would still be so hesitant to call it a deity. I think what happened was the spirit became my alter ego. So basically, again, there is another factor. When I was in the US, because when I was painting tankas, people, when they knew that I am a Buddhist, I have a Buddhist background, I'm painting tankas, then suddenly you are treated like a holy person. And that was, that I call that Shangri-La effect, because somebody is projecting onto you as a like really, you know, enlightened being. And whereas I'm just a normal person, right? I probably like to smoke, I probably like to drink, I can't like function like a normal person. And that was too much for me. So basically the idea was they started seeing God in me, but whereas I'm just a normal being. So the spirit character is a combination of me and then this projection. So that's why the head is always like a deity, because they project a deity onto me.
That's a great concept.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm trying to shatter that deity projection, because I don't want people to think of me as someone holy, because that puts me in a box, doesn't allow me to be me, right? So
But still, people try to project the same thing in a different way. I mean, there are people who meditate in the Thanka itself. And yet, there are some artists like you who have, tried to go out or go beyond the same scene and create something new.
yeah.
There's a big, debate going on.
Yeah. Well, actually,
Whether-
there shouldn't be a debate. I think, in my opinion, I highly, highly revere like works of my father. Not just him, but many artists like himself. Because for them, it is their reality. Because it is their practice. And for whole life that they have dedicated or devoted to this work. And that's absolutely fine. We can't say like that is wrong, because I still consider my work to be a branch of this traditional training. So without this traditional training background, I wouldn't be able to create what I'm creating today. So I have huge appreciation and everything. So, and I also have huge appreciation and envy of the people who actually can paint traditional art, because maybe for them this whole process in itself is a spiritual practice, unlike for me, which didn't happen. because when I had to paint a same image over and over and over, I become bored, you know. And which was like, it's me. And it has probably a lot to do with like what kind of environment I was brought up in, what kind of information we were like, you know, fed. Like television was coming up, satellite TV was coming, MTV was coming, all different types of musics were coming, Coca-Cola was there. So we were all, my generation in the 80s, we were all looking towards the West. Everything, anything from the West was amazing.
Yes.
So we were kind of brainwashed to some extent to always look towards the West. And that's why like maybe I was always running away from Thangka also, because it was like the 1,000-year-old tradition. My contemporaries, like my friends, they're all talking about Nike or Adidas and Metallica and I don't know, Sylvester Stallone, and you don't expect them to, like if I'm talking about deity and this, that's not like, and I was just, you know, just growing up back then. I was 19, 20, so that's not exciting at all. Like, I think I can't imagine that with young kids today also, because because you are surrounded by your environment, which is your friends, like whatever kind of like mindset that you hang out with, you know, you get attracted to that.
So has the spirits still continuing with you?
So then after I came back to Nepal, I think it was back in 2016, 17, right after the earthquake, I was here. And then I was actually hanging out with one of my friends. And his daughter, who was like 6 or 7 years old back then, she said like, how come all the spirits are men, you know? How come there are no women? Then that's when it hit me, like, it has always been about me to some extent. Now it needs to be not just about me, but about everybody, all of us. So how do I create that? Because this girl actually can't relate to the work because she can't find any form of relationship. And that's when I decided to create like female spirits. That's when the whole idea of like making it more about every one of us rather than just me. You know.
So while you were returning back to Nepal in the year 2016, were you affiliated or had your affiliation with the Rossi and Rossi Gallery still there?
Yeah. So I started working with them since 2009 and it's continued like all up until now. Yeah. So I have 1 or 2 shows every year, either at the gallery or at the art fair through them. So, and I didn't have, it was really an easy decision for me and my wife to move back to Nepal because I didn't see any importance for me to remain in the US. Right after the earthquake in 2016, I was here for a while, and I was actually here because my father is here and my sister, brother's here. And then I was here for about 3 or 4 months temporarily. And then I went back. And then I started seriously thinking like maybe we should move back to Nepal because my father is getting older. And for me, it's not important to be in the US because I was not having any exhibitions in the US at that time because I would be painting, and once I finished painting, I would just ship it to London. And then I would have exhibition in London, I would have exhibition in Hong Kong, and it just doesn't make sense for me to have to be in the US, you know, because wherever I go, I'm just shipping my work to Rossi and Rossi to do all the exhibitions. So I felt maybe I can also hire some assistants if I come back to Nepal. Then I started working with 2 of my assistants here. And that's when I established. I wasn't really thinking about the Nepali art scene or Nepali art market, anything like that. I was just thinking like I can hire 2 assistants or 3 assistants. I'll have my studio here, paint. There's FedEx. I can always like ship it to Rossi and Rossi, and they'll do exhibitions, sell it. So no, because I was really very little, I had very little knowledge about the Nepali art scene back then, very limited knowledge. So I really didn't think anything, like I was just here to work.
Let's focus a little bit of light into the gallery culture there, since you were affiliated with the Rossi and Rossi.
Yeah.
What kind of environment was it that made you work for it? I mean,
Work with them.
You used to send the paintings to them.
So gallery culture is like, so you actually start working with a gallery. When a gallery starts representing you, that means they're like not just a gallery to show at, but they're your managers. Just like, let's say, an actor has a manager, be it in Hollywood, Bollywood, whatever. And their job is to promote you. Their job is to find jobs for you, exhibit your works, sell your works, manage your schedule, find exhibitions in museums. So all of that. So then, because Rossi and Rossi was already a reputed gallery, and I saw their track record that they were selling works and artists didn't have to suffer by not being able to sell their works, So I was really happy, and once I started working with them, actually, there was at times like, it's amazing that, let's say I have an exhibition next month, and I'm shipping my works today to the gallery. The works would get sold even before it reaches the gallery. So they are so good, like they actually promote you, and they have their clientele, very, very like, how do you say, strong relationship with their clients, and for many, many years. So that was amazing. Like then me as an artist, I didn't have to worry about like how to sell my work, what happens if I don't sell my work, because I was only working with one gallery. I wasn't working with multiple galleries. Rossi and Rossi was the only one. And I was very lucky, I guess. I was able to sell, they were able to sell my works. They would find exhibitions for me. And so, yeah, everything worked out really well. And it was just that like I needed to be closer to my dad, and I wanted to do some really big works. And in order to do big works, you need assistance. So I thought like it's only possible in Nepal.
So was it in the same year, after 2016, that you started, or the idea of opening a gallery here?
No. So this conversation with me and one of my friends locally here in Kathmandu, we used to talk a lot in San Francisco, like it would be nice to have a gallery in Nepal. I never was that keen on the gallery scene, because I know as an artist, like the commerce and art like normally don't mix, because then you have to be a dealer, right? You can't be an artist. But I came here I actually relocated in 2018. 2016 I came temporarily, 2017 I came temporarily, but 18 I decided to move here. So January of 2018 we moved here. And then I started interacting with local artists. Then I started talking to them, and then I found out more about the art scene here, the condition of the galleries, how much they can sell their work, what kind of difficulties or issues that they have. And then I felt like it'll be very nice to have more galleries here, because we have limited amount of galleries. We have so many number of artists graduating every year from 3 art schools. They don't have enough space to showcase their work. So I felt like maybe we should do something like that, but in a very minimal way. Like it will be just to promote, to showcase their work. And I was also keen on like having exhibition of traditional artists and contemporary artists together as a dialogue, you know, because I always felt like at that time I felt that there were two camps. This is, I'm traditional, like I don't want to budge. I am contemporary. I don't care about tradition. So there were two camps. But in my opinion, because I happen to fit right in the middle, because I know both the worlds, I felt like maybe there needs to be a communication. Maybe there need, if we appreciate each other's works, then it can have a bigger impact than like just trying to stay away from each other. So that's when I decided like maybe we should do contemporary and traditional artwork exhibition, providing young artists an opportunity where, so initially when we were exhibiting, we were only looking for artists who had no exhibitions ever. So mostly we will, yeah. Yeah, who were in the shadows. So it's like the underdogs, you know. So that's what we were looking for. Because, yeah, I would talk to some people and they're like, oh, okay, I've never had an exhibition before in a gallery. So I said, yeah, let's work together, you know. So that's how we started.
So
yeah.
Was it then the idea of Windhorse Gallery
Yes.
came into existence?
Yes. So that's when we started the Windhorse Gallery. And it was more of a like a pilot project to test what happens. And we were very happy. There was a huge support from the community, many young clients, new clients, and I think I was much more keen on creating a client base, new client base, rather than just feeding off of like existing clients. Because I feel Nepal as a country has many young, dynamic, like, let's say, in any field, like doctor, engineer, entrepreneur, anywhere, you know, like they're all coming up. And if we all participate together, then we can create a very sustainable, like, art scene. So that was my focus.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mr. Sherpa is not only an artist, he also represented Nepal in the Venice Biennale.
Mm-hmm.
How was the experience like, or how did the idea pop up to represent Nepal as such a
As an artist, of course. So no, Venice Biennale is like one of the most prestigious venue, and I felt it was very important for Nepal to be visible, because when we talk about visibility, like, okay, we have exhibitions here, let's say in Kathmandu Valley, you know, like in Pokhara, and then who gets to see the work? Like the locals here and a handful of people, basically, who are interested in art form. But in order to get that international attention, we need to be out there. And that hadn't happened ever before. And I think it had a lot to do with like, you know, because we had limited knowledge about the venue, we had limited knowledge about the process, we had limited fund to do anything. So, yeah, somehow it happened. We were able to pull this off. And at that time also my focus was more about creating a spotlight for Nepal, Nepali art scene. Because even today, like if you go to Europe or like to certain places, even in America, like when you tell them like you're an artist from Nepal, they tend to think like Nepal and art, like somehow they can't put these two words together.
True.
Yeah, they feel like Nepal should be more like Mount Everest, you know, like, and art is like a different thing, you know. So they can't imagine these two together. So, but we already have a very unique and dynamic like art scene happening, and this needs to be known by outsiders, people. Yeah.
So in Vanish Me Now, the title of the painting that you did was Spirits, or more fragmented spirits.
No, it's 24 views of Garuda.
Yes.
So the idea, if you look at my work, I have had several series that I have done from the beginning. One you could probably categorize as early works, which was before any of these series were born. And then after that was the Spirit series. Then simultaneously I was also working on Fragment series, which is, so basically how it developed was I was commissioned. So the gallery actually, Rossi and Rossi, when I was still in the residency in Vermont, they wrote to me and saying like, okay, there's an art collector who's commissioning 6 different artists. You have to make 108 paintings, individual paintings, but they all are connected to each other. So how do you create that? Like, other artists had done like different things, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I was still in the residency. Then I kept on thinking about this whole project, and then it occurred to me, like when I saw a very old tanka of Chakrasambara at the Metropolitan Museum online. So I printed it out, and it was a big print. And what I did was, okay, I'm going to paint like just portions of that tanka individually in different canvases. So I took a piece of paper, I cut out like a small piece, and then I would just place it in certain area, and then I mark and say like, okay, this is going to be one painting. The next one is going to be one painting. So I created fragment like that. So altogether I did 108 paintings, 20 by 20 inches. So they became kind of like, in a way, if you think of a mala, like a prayer bead, which is 108, they're individuals, but they make a whole. Another reason for me to do that fragment painting was also, I felt our, like, let's say, in the diaspora, everybody actually brings a fragment of their tradition from back home, be it language, be it culture, be it like, you know, how you, I don't know, food, anything. So, and they try to pass it down to their children, you know, who were born in the diaspora. So I felt it was such a beautiful concept, and so the Fragment series was born in that manner. Simultaneously, there's another series that I also explored, which is, I call it Protector series. Basically, I was again thinking about my whole practice itself, and okay, what happens when I was studying Thangka painting? The instruction that the teacher gives you is, you have to make it exact. You have to copy exact, because that means like you're doing good. If you can copy exactly like your teacher, means you're good. But to me, I wanted to fool around and say like, what happens if I manipulate the form? Like if I, you know, swirl the form or do something with the form and it's unrecognizable, it's abstracted. Will it still be as, how do you say, as important as with the figure, or will it lose its own, like, you know, meaning? So that was another important factor. So that's when I started like exploring the Protector series also. And I think in 2013, I actually did a lot of children's series.
I vividly remember one of his paintings where school-going children are hanging in a rope.
Yeah. So that picture I actually took it from internet. Like it was some Nepali children like who had to cross a bridge on the ropeway to go to school. So I was really touched by that, and I titled it "Hanging in There," you know. And and there's another title, a Golden Child series. So what I noticed in the diaspora at that time was many young children were born, and our generation, we were also baffled. Like, we don't know, do we call ourselves Nepali? Do we call ourselves American? Who are we? We're like so diluted, you know. And then this younger generation coming up, and then again simultaneously, this international news was so depressing at that time, because in my studio, whenever I paint, I always put on the radio in the background. So I didn't listen to music. I listened to a lot of like news and information, and I would just absorb whatever was coming into the news, and then it gets projected onto the work sometimes, you know, immediately. And the news was so depressing, like there's war going on, there's chaos, there's famine, there's this and that. And I used to think, because my niece, my sister's daughter, was also growing into, like she was growing up. And I felt like, what kind of world are we living behind for this child? We like cherish them as precious people, like the golden child, right? But in a black cloud, like in a dark cloud, like, so what kind of world are we living behind? So it was a depressing period for me also. I was going through a little bit of a dark phase. So I was more exploring that series at that time. So all of these like different series were born out of these thing. And you might notice, like I have another series called Gestures, which I actually fragment like just the gestures of the deities. I put them together, jumble them together to create something, you know, which is a little abstract, but at the same time it's a big, like giant ball of like gestures. And I created that work in bronze for Venice also in last year, yeah.
And there's another set of paintings that you did on miniatures.
Miniatures, yeah. So that was recently. It was 2018 or something like that. I was invited to British Museum, Pitt Rivers Museum, and Victoria and Albert Museum to look at their collection, etc. And I've always been a big fan of miniature paintings, and I wanted to give it a contemporary subject matter and not do some portraits of some king or something like that, but rather like focus on our Nepali you know, experiences. So there's I used to take pictures on the street, like maybe a woman bathing a child, you know, just on the street. Sherpa guy like carrying some loads, people going to the Middle East as, you know, workers. So all of these subject matters were kind of interesting. So I wanted to explore that in miniature form. So I did a set of like, I think 8 or 9 paintings at that time.
As an artist, limiting yourself in the canvases was not enough for you.
Oh, yeah.
You started experimenting in so many different ways.
Yes,
in
yes.
statues.
Yes. See, then after coming back to Nepal, what I felt was my main goal has been like, okay, visibility, visibility, visibility. And we talk about Nepali art scene. sort of like, I think I am like someone who understands the traditional nuances, traditional artwork, and the traditional like cultures nuances. I understand the contemporary art world. How can I bring them together to a platform where they can both be appreciated at the same time? So how do you do that? I'm always complaining about like Nepali traditional art becoming more and more commodified. You can, like in many interviews, in conversations, I'm always constantly talking about it, like because I feel that it's the value of the traditional art is degraded like every year, and we're trying to sell it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to like tourists. How do we bring it back to the same like same status that it was there at one point? So then I felt like I saw so many talented artists. Like the first artist that I collaborated with was Rajan Shah, who's a repose artist in Bodha. He has a very small, tiny studio. His craftsmanship is amazing. And I could immediately feel that if I collaborated with this guy, we can come up with an amazing artwork. So I wanted to like address the earthquake problem. Like it was more of a therapeutic process for both for me as well as like wishing like sort of peace and happiness and commemorating all those who passed away. So we created a structure which is like a mandala. Then we actually, so I always try to how do you say, bring the craftsmanship, the skill into the work with my vision and my design and my concept. And when these two merge together, something dynamic can happen sometimes, So I was able to actually, I felt much more confident once I started working with Rajan. We exhibited the work in Hong Kong first. It traveled to Nepal for Kathmandu Triennale. And then after that, it traveled to Yinchuan Biennale in China. And then it traveled to New York, and then to Virginia, and then it's traveling all over the world right now. And it also got acquired by a museum. And this was my first opportunity to actually mention to the museum that many times, even though it's a collaboration, the artist takes all the credit, and the collaborator or the craftsman never gets not paid but credited. And I said like, because the very reason why I'm doing this is to create a visibility for these traditional artists. So for me, it's very important. So if you go to like any of the database of any of the museums that I have collaborated, they always make sure like in collaboration with Rajan Shah. He's the one like who actually created this work, So this actually creates an opportunity for the artist to say that, hey, my work actually resides in a museum now. So he or she can also feel proud and appreciate his or her work. Because Rajan was on the verge of like leaving everything and going to Malaysia, actually. He told me a couple of times. And I said, don't do that. Like this is, what you have is like, you don't even know what you have, Because you are surrounded by ignorant people, and you feel that your work is not valuable. But let it arrive at the right place where it is appreciated properly, So then I started working with another bronze sculptor. It's a foundry in itself, like Shyam Maharjan's foundry in Patan. So we created some bronze sculptures. Then I finally collaborated with Bijay Marjan for the Yeti project, and then that gave me the idea of fiberglass and painting and everything. So we created some other works. So I'm so fortunate to share with you that any collaboration that I have done up until now, all of the works are in museums, museum collections. So Shyam Maharjan's work, museum collection. Bijay Maharjan, museum collection. You know, like even the carpet, actually, it is going to go to a museum collection. So I'm so proud. Like, this was the intention. The idea was to bring it from here to a place where it is highly, highly respected, so that it's not just to some collector's house, you know, where you can't even tell like where it is.
I want to ask you one interesting fact, that some of your artworks are even in carpet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when an art collector buys it, will he use it as a
Carpet?
floor, as a carpet, or will he be hanging it in the wall itself?
Actually, when we started it, it was supposed to be a carpet. Again, carpet can be functional, at the same time it can be artwork also. But I think, and also our approach was, it shouldn't be a mass production, it should be limited edition. Because the whole idea of, it's about creating, a concept, creating a perception. Once you limit the number, then automatically people start appreciating it in a different way, because it's not a mass production. We're not creating like a whole art carpet factory or something like that. So maybe we will come up with new designs, new things, but they will all be limited so that it's valuable, you know. So yes, in Nepal, like many of our friends actually started collecting these carpets. Unfortunately, even though we tell them like you can actually put it on the floor, they prefer to put it on the wall. So, so everything, all the carpets are hanging actually right now.
So in the same line, the portal of 8848 is really popular here.
Yeah.
Since Tsherin painting is there.
Yeah.
Is it also going to be in limited edition?
Yes, it was actually created just 30,000 bottles, and I think it's sold out from the factory. So whatever is circulating in the distributors, I think that's about it. And then after that, it'll be back to normal like bottle 8848.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did the idea began
So
for collaboration?
So all of these collaborations, like I've always wanted to, again, addressing some of the situations in Nepal within the art scene. Basically, sometimes I talk to artists and it almost makes me feel like the art, what do you call that? The art only has to happen in a gallery space, in a museum space. It is viewed in a certain way. Today, if you look at, like, we're not the first one to do this. Yes, in Nepal, we're the first ones to do this. But if you look, there has been this trend for a long time. If you look at different beverages, they have collaborated with Andy Warhol. They have collaborated with Picasso. They have collaborated. So this is basically creating an object, an ordinary object, into art form, you know. So, I think it can happen anywhere. And right now, it's happening more and more. So I wanted to actually, let's say, borrow this whole concept together with the 8848 like company, and they actually approached me first, and I was super excited because I immediately said, like, you're the first guy who actually sees it, and I'm super excited, let's work together. For me, I had another agenda. The agenda was, because now we're trying to promote, like, let's say, preserve and promote the traditional art, and we have classes happening every Saturday in Bodha, and I'm paying for the whole education program, everything in my own. I haven't received money from anybody. And I felt like these companies that are big companies, corporates, they need to understand the art world. So I told them, okay, like, let's collaborate. You're paying for education of these children for so many years. And that was our contract. And that's what they're doing now. So it worked out, and they got excited. Once they understood, they started documenting the classes, they started interviewing the students. Then they felt like, wow, there's this whole big thing happening, and we should be part of it. So now the corporate, like, for example, 8848, for example, are super excited to support other artists, projects, and that's how they got excited, you know. Otherwise, before that, they were only thinking about their own product. And for me, it was like an opportunity to actually talk to them and make them see, like, what the scene is like. Because I told them, this is our heritage. And not just mine, but yours too, right? You are a big company. What is your responsibility, social responsibility? Can you actually see this? Like, today I will paint this drawing, design, whatever on the bottle, but in the long run, like, what is your contribution going to be, you know? So that's how we are step by step trying to change the whole perception of the people, you know. Yeah.
Let's talk about Asia Art Game Changer Award. Were you the first guy from Nepal to receive
Yes.
as an artist?
Yes, in the art field.
What impact has it done in your life after getting it?
Yes, so it was a huge surprise for me. I received their email and said, like, we have nominated you as one of the, like, 2023 Asia Arts Game Changer Award. And I looked at all the, like, artists who have received this award, and I was blown away. These are all the artists, like, that I look up to, you know. These are international heroes, like Cai Chang, Zhang Fanzi, Zhang Xiaogang, like Liu Wei from China, right? And from Japan, Takashi Murakami, like Yoshito Monara. These are all the ones that you study, basically, and you actually, you know, aspire to become. Like, these are the game changers, basically. And to be appreciated by an organization as someone like them, it's a huge honor, but at the same time, a huge responsibility also. Because tomorrow, I have to prove that I deserve this award. And how do I do that? So it actually is a big responsibility, definitely, to create a fertile, like, sustainable environment, at least for Nepal, like, art scene. So yes, we have to work towards it, but it was such an honor, like, all these big names, Indian artists, Pakistani artists, and yes, for the first time, Asia Society actually focused on Nepal also in the art context. And I think this is a big thing for Nepal in itself as a whole, because now their attention is not just on an individual like myself, but to the whole art scene. And then what is happening in the art. Like, I had a lengthy conversation with the directors of the museum over there, and then donors and people. And my speech was also about, like, yes, it was a game changer for me, but I hope it becomes a game changer for Nepal in itself. And I hope this award will shed some light on Nepal too, because many of the times, like, big countries, you know, being around several big countries, we disappear. And then somehow this focus has been on Nepal this time, so which is amazing, yeah.
So many art collectors here in Nepal. they are curious on acquiring your artworks
Acha.
because they do not know how to do it. Most of your artworks goes to Rossi and Rossi
Yes.
from a long time.
Yes.
What is the procedure like in order to acquire?
Oh, it's very easy. Now we have a new gallery called Takpa Gallery in Lazipat. And the whole idea of that is, yes, also to make my works available here in Nepal through Takpa Gallery. But at the same time, we're also going to work with other artists who are going to have number of exhibitions in our gallery. And yeah, so I think Takpa will probably have to meet up the expectation. And Takpa Gallery will definitely try to be a gallery that focuses on uplifting the whole Nepali art market, because Takpa is a commercial gallery, so it will focus on enhancing and creating a larger group of audience and collectors here as well as internationally. And also Takpa's responsibility will be to create visibility for Nepali artists abroad. So I have a feeling that Takpa will also collaborate with many other international galleries. And the idea is to create an opportunity of visibility for Nepali artists at the end. Yeah.
Could you tell us your plans, upcoming plans?
Upcoming plans. Upcoming plans. Actually, well, basically, I want to collaborate with more and more traditional artists here. So I may work with ceramic artists. I may work with other forms of like wood carving, whatnot. I want to see the possibilities. I may fail in doing that. Some projects may fail. It doesn't matter. But at least it will be an experiment and opportunity to work. I definitely want to, keep focusing on creating a dialogue between traditional art and contemporary art artists. Talk to more and more museums and curators to pay attention to Nepali art scene, so that they also get an opportunity. I think Rubin Museum is planning a big exhibition on Nepali artists, and which is exciting. Similarly, yes, as for me individually, I'm just preparing for an exhibition in Paris in January 2024. And I have a couple of exhibitions at one in Asia Society Houston Museum and one in Monterey Museum of Art in California. So making preparations for that.
Right. Since people are so much interested to see your entire work series in Takpa, would people be able to see it?
Yeah. Definitely in the future, but for now we're just having our first grand opening on April 15th or 16th. We're planning a show between me and my father. So it's going to be like a teacher and student together, some work, because I've never had that kind of exhibition before with my father. So this will be a wonderful opportunity. Apart from that, yes, in the future, maybe we'll do a show to share different series works from different series. Regarding another thing is also Takpa is collaborating with many international galleries, which is going to be a visibility opportunity for many artists here. Even me, I will be working with some important galleries internationally, and sometimes what I've noticed during my conversation with the galleries is that even for these galleries me, I am like a newcomer, I'm like a new thing for them. They have no understanding or information whatsoever on Nepali art scene. So through conversation, through dialogue, through collaboration, I can actually divert their attention towards Nepali art scene. And that ripple effect is very important, because anytime I'm becoming more and more like an advocate for Nepali art scene, not by choice, but I'm bound, because I live in Nepal now, like, you know, unlike before where I was more in California, but now I'm mostly based in Nepal. I'm just traveling for exhibitions, etc. So I feel like there's this strong emotional connection already there. Apart from that, like again, like we're talking about the responsibility. Asia Arts Game Changer Award, like I have to meet up with their expectations. And so all of these like will happen, and I'm super excited about this actually. Yeah.
So any messages to the upcoming artists or the artists practicing here in Nepal?
Yeah, please continue working hard. I think that is one of the most important messages I have, because I notice like sometimes we get carried away and we talk too much and we don't do too much, you know. Like, and I think for an artist, what is our job? Our job is to create. And if you don't create, if it is all in your head, it's not going to work. So you have to create, you have to produce, and you can't make an excuse saying, oh, this is not happening, that is not happening, because you have to have a whole body of work so that people can actually see that work, and based on that they can, like, you know, make a judgment or whatever. And I see that happening with younger artists a lot. Like they like to, it's not just here, even in the West. They talk too much and they do very little. And that's sometimes not beneficial for visual artists. If you are just a verbal artist, then it's a different thing, right?